Welcome to our episode of Are You Man Enough? And we have been very excited about this episode. We have Mr. Bryan Ward. He is the founder of DadUpp Podcast. He is a championship basketball coach, an Army vet. We're going to get a chance to dig in and really looking forward to this because I know this is a gentleman that I truly respect, not only in the space that he serves in his area, but in his community around the world. So first of all, Bryan, welcome to Are You Man Enough? How are you, my friend?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for the last 2 weeks, so I appreciate it. But I do have to correct you in one area.
Yes.
You said I'm an Army vet. Never compare Army to Marines.
Thank you.
I'm literally a Marine Corps.
Okay, why don't we just change this around? Because the second I said it, I'm like, you're a Marine Corps vet.
Yeah, Marine Corps.
You're gonna hate me. Please forget. Yes.
It's all good. All good.
How many years did you serve in the Marine Corps?
4 years. 4 years, and to be honest, I think back now, I probably should have served longer because I did enjoy it. There were a couple things that took place while I was in that kind of were. I don't know. They rubbed me the wrong way, and I felt that I could do better in what the military calls a civilian world. So I felt I could do a little bit better out there. And it's funny, when I checked out, when I was going through my checkout process, my last day, the commanding officer, I had to check out with him and have an interview with him. And he said, "So you're ready to get out, huh?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I'm ready to get out." And he goes, "What can we do to get you to stay in?" And I said, "I don't know, sir. I'm looking forward to being a civilian." And he said, "Well, what if we offered you 15 grand to reenlist right now?" And I said, when you're in the military, you don't make a whole lot of money. Everything's pretty much covered for you, but you don't make a whole lot of money. And so 15 grand to a 22-year-old, that's a lot of money. And I said, "Well, for 4 years?" And he said, "No, if we re-enlisted you, you'd have to do 6." And I turned it down. I said, "No, I think I'm ready to move on." So I think back now, had I done that, I would already be retired. I would already be retired. So live and learn. But it was a great time. I've learned a lot. It helped me grow up, helped me mature, helped me learn work ethic. All those things I needed. And I'm proud of the service. I'm proud of what I did. And it was just a great part of my life and something that I will always cherish and never forget.
I'm sure you've gotten some Marine Corps buddies that are lifelong friends. I just want to back up for a second because you said as a 22-year-old, you were offered $15,000. And in this would be like the equivalent of like a $200,000 bonus. Right. And so your eyes had to have gotten big and you had to at least have thought about it. What made you turn that down?
Gosh,
I wouldn't turn it down. I've been like, "Hey, let's buy me Ferrari."
I paused. I was like, wow. I really considered it. I right on the spot. I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And I think why I turned it down is I just felt that I didn't want to go another 6 years and be 10 years. Here's the thing: if I went 10 years in, I kept thinking to myself, if I went 10 years in, by the time I got out after that 6 years, I'd be 10 years in. At that point, I'm halfway through. At that point, you're kind of like, why get out now? You're 10 years in. You got 10 more years to go till you retire. Why not just stay in the next 10? So I just thought I didn't want to get stuck in that trap of being 10 years in and then going, okay, now what? I think I should probably stay in another 10. So I think that's why I turned it down.
That was a huge decision. And I think that might have had some really good outcomes. So for that 6 years, let's talk about what happened in that span of 6 years that you would have been enlisted, but what you chose to do instead. Tell us about how your life developed, how you got married, maybe had kids. So what was entailed in that 6 years that you would have been serving? What did you do instead?
A lot happened in that 6 years. I actually met my wife when I was in the Marine Corps. We were dating at the time. So we'd been dating about a year when I got out. And I knew that she didn't want me to stay in, but that wasn't part of my decision. But so I met my wife. After I got out, I went back, believe it or not, I had worked at a grocery store prior to going into the service. And when you work at a union job, at 18 years old, when I went into the service, when you work at a union job, your job is guaranteed when you finish service. So when I got out of the military, I didn't have a job. And I knew that my girlfriend, my now wife, I knew that we were going to be getting married soon. I needed a job. And so I ended up reaching out to my old manager at my grocery store that I worked at in Central California and said, hey, I need a job at a grocery store here in Southern California. This is where I'm at. And he said, give me 2 days, I'll get you a job. And he did. So I got a job at the grocery store working at a rate that I was making when I went into the service. So my pay went up, and I was there for about 6 months until I landed a job at a bank doing auto loans. I was an underwriter for auto paper, and believe it or not, that's where I'm still at today. I work as a manager now. I'm managing a department at a bank, at the same bank 24 years later. But in that 6 years, I managed to go from a little grocery store job to now a 22-year-old making $27,000 a year at bank. And I was like, I've hit the lottery, 22 years old, no kids, had just gotten married when my wife and when I started working at the bank. I was about to get married. So 22 years old, about to get married, 27 grand a year. I was sitting pretty high. And fast forward a little bit, a couple years later, now my wife and I are married 2 years. And I should tell you that when we were newlyweds, and I've never told you this, Matt, when we were newlyweds, we went on the Newlywed Game show and actually won. So we won the Newlywed Game show with Bob Eubanks and all that, and ended up won a trip to Spain, Canary Islands, and but we ended up having a son. 2 years into our marriage, we ended up having a son. That was my firstborn, who's now 22 years old. And then 2 years later, we had another son. So that's what happened in that span of that 6 years. I found I got a good job. My wife was able to stay home with the boys because they were young. That was important for her as a mom when they were young, to be a stay-at-home mom. So I had enough income where she could stay home, and we had 2 young boys. So a lot happened.
This sounds like a fairy tale so far. I mean, for those, I know we have some people tuning in who are like, what's the Newlywed Game and who's Bob Eubanks? I remember that. Holy cow. Well, I would say that things are going well up to this point. You've got a beautiful family. You're just blessed with 2 boys. You get married. You have your job. Where would you say some of the lessons learned? I know there might have been some pitfalls. So maybe we have some people watching who are about to get married who haven't really experienced anything as far as road bumps. What changed after you got married and had kids?
Well, shoot, I think, something that new couples really don't understand is the importance of communication. Communication is huge. And a lot of guys do not know how to communicate with their wives. We're just not good at it. And I wish that I had learned better communication skills when we first got married, because I think that would have avoided a lot of our issues. Every couple goes through issues. We all have our little issues. We all have arguments. We all have little fights. So we did have those. But I think had I been better at communicating with her and really expressing my feelings and my emotions, that I think we would have avoided some of those issues that we did have, especially with parenting. I mean, parenting was huge. I was a terrible father when we first started having kids. I was very involved, but as far as learning how to control, I was fresh out of the Marines. I had a lot of anger issues. I was dealing with that, and I was very quick to get upset with our boys, very quick to get upset with my wife, and those are things that I'm not proud of. But had I knew how to control those things early on, we would have avoided them. It would have been much better. So I think for any newlywed or any couple that's about to get married, I think it's super important that you invest in a counselor, a therapist, to really learn not only who you are as an individual, but who you are as a couple. Because as a couple, you're united as one, right? So as a couple, you need to learn how to unite as one and learn how to communicate with each other on equal ground. And it will go much smoother.
Agreed 100%. We went through premarital counseling, and that was one of the biggest things that they said communicate effectively and know how to express your feelings. And men, we aren't wired. This is the whole point of Are You Man Enough? You know, we had built a center around just this very topic alone. And you and I have had conversations about this privately, but publicly, you know, guys are suffering everywhere. They don't know how to express their anger. So they internalize it, and it ends up becoming a powder keg and overflowing and bubbling up in other areas of life. But most importantly, the relationship with our spouses. So when you were going through this, let's rewind instead of fast forward.
Okay.
How was your relationship with your father?
It wasn't good. I'll give you some details. My relationship with my father was there. My father's still there. My parents are still married. So as far as that unity goes between the two of them, they're still together. But as far as being a really all-in dad, he really wasn't. He wanted me to he tried to get me into cars. You know, he and I built my very first cars. I had, as a 12-year-old, I had a paper route. I bought a car for $50, a 1962 Chevy Nova for $50. And he and I built it together. So there was that bonding time with him. But outside of working on hot rods, because he had a couple other cars that we were working on together, outside of that wasn't really a big interest in mine. I just wanted a car. And so that's why I was invested in it and did it. But outside of that, there really was no involvement. I played a lot of sports as a child. I played soccer. I played baseball. And I used to go to practices and games with my friends' parents because my parents didn't want to go or either couldn't go. You know, so they worked regular jobs, so they were at work all day. But even on weekends, I rode with my friends' parents because my parents just didn't want to go. And so that, when you're a child and you don't have that kind of support, it's hard. And I don't begrudge my parents for how they raised me. I think they did a pretty good job, to be honest. But on the flip side, I know they did the best they could, but I know they could have done better. And now that's what's led me to kind of this journey of fatherhood myself and how involved I am with my boys, exactly what impacted me as a child. And it's funny, you know, I know that I've told you this, but my wife and I see a marriage coach. And that's one of the things that she's done with me, is try to dive deep into what were some of my issues as a child that may be transitional or have transitioned to me as an adult, and how to course correct. Because we have this, you know, I know Tony Robbins talks a lot about the record player in your mind, in your head, that's just playing the same thing over and over again. You got to learn to scratch that out. And that's what I'm trying to do now as an adult, still today at 48 years old. I'm trying to scratch that record to kind of recreate these new patterns.
You mentioned something that I believe has led you to do the things that you're doing now and staying in the involvement with your sons. I mentioned earlier that you were a championship basketball coach. You take coaching very seriously.
Very.
What I find interesting is you're giving back to your community, and you maybe have coached your sons, but now you're coaching others. What is that like? What kind of impact has your father's relationship had with you in comparison to what you're doing now for others?
Well, I think that's one of the things that my dad did teach me is, I guess, the mistakes that he made, I've learned from and learned not to go that same road. And I think that's why I still coach today, is that I want to try to impact other players that may be going through similar situations that I went through as a child. I have coached so many games that I can see players, and there are players there are parents of players that I've never even met. And it hurts me as a coach, because I know as a young boy how important that is to have that support. So when I see these players go to these games and then I see that they have no support there, that's why I do it. That's exactly why I do it. I want to be able to, hey, if your parents aren't going to be that involved, then I'm going to make sure that I'm as involved as possible, even if it's just in sports, that you'll feel comfortable enough to come to me and talk to me about any issue you may be having, even outside of sports. And I've had many players that have done that. I've had players that have graduated high school and called me up or sent me a text and said, hey, coach, this is so-and-so. Would you be willing to meet with me? I'm trying to figure out some things in my life, and I need your guidance or your support or something. And I've met with players, sat down at meals with players and said, okay, what do you have going on? What do you need to do? What do you want to do? And we've set out roadmaps for them. Here's some goals. You have your goals written down. Here's some goals. I'm going to keep track of you. I'm going to hold you accountable. If you want me to help you, you have to help me by being accountable for what you're doing. And so I've done that for players even after high school. So it's super important to me, and I take it very seriously. I don't know how much longer I'm going to coach, because there is this part of me where, both my older son's now out of college. My younger son's entering, is a freshman in college. And I think I got maybe a couple more years of coaching, and then I kind of want to, I kind of want to step back a little bit. So it's not always fair for my wife to be home at night because I'm out at practice. So I want to give some quality time between the two of us. So when we are officially empty nesters, because my younger son's, doing homeschooling because of the pandemic, when we are officially empty nesters, I'll be able to sit back and enjoy quality time with her that, we haven't had for the last 22 years.
There's two things that you brought up that I think is crucially and vitally important. I've gotten a chance to coach for roughly 15 years. And what I was finding was these kids were confiding in the coaches more than they were confiding in their parents. And they were finding that as they were doing studies over a 10-year period, coaches were becoming more influential than their own biological parents. And that trend really just shook me. It was like, wow, how much of a difference are you making? If you have a very calm lake and you throw a pebble in it, that ripple goes all the way to shore, and you can see it and you can feel it. Well, sometimes what we pour into others, we don't immediately see that gratification. Right. What's really been the inherent reward that you get from coaching? Because I know if you're not coaching your sons and you're coaching other kids, you have to be doing it for a reason. What was your main reason for really feeling satisfied? Because selfishly, we do feel good when we win, but we also feel better when the kids win. So what was your driver after your kids stopped playing sports? Why did you stick around?
Well, I think it's just what I talked about before. It's just the fact that I know that I'm able to be that driving force for those players outside of sports. Obviously, I coach because I just love being a part of something, of a team atmosphere. I love being a part of that winning. I hate losing. I'm very competitive. When I'm on the basketball court, I'm super fiery. Sometimes my wife texts me and says, you need to calm down. But I get super fiery. I'm very competitive. But I also want to make sure that these boys know, hey, I'm here for you. I have your back, just like my boys do. I want my boys to know I have their back no matter what. And I want these boys to feel the same way. So that's why I still do it today. I want them to know, hey, I'm here for you. Whether you have support at home or not, I'm here for you. So if you need to talk to me about anything at all, you can come to me.
It's amazing how our dads can shape the way that we do things 30 years after we're leaving the house, because we're very similar in age, and we've had talks about this. So now you started up the DadUpp Podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you started that, and really where that's going and how that's affecting your life?
Yeah, I kind of regret not starting it sooner. But the main reason why I started is, like I said, my older son, at the time when I started it, my older son was in college. My younger son had just graduated a senior in high school. And I thought there's going to be this point in our lives, or in my life, that, they're both adults now. And so I started to feel this empty, like, void, I guess, in my heart, that, hey, my fatherhood journey is over. Even though it technically isn't, but my fatherhood journey is over. I've done what I was supposed to do. I raised two good young men. And so I started thinking, now what? What am I going to do? How can I still be involved in some way? Because obviously I'm still involved in my boys' lives, but how can I contribute even more? Because that journey is over. And so I really started to feel like this loss. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law, and I was kind of sharing what I was feeling. And he said, he's the one that brought it up. He's like, why don't you start a podcast where you're helping other dads? And it was something that never even crossed my mind. I had no idea how to do a podcast, no clue where to even begin. And when he said it, I thought, I don't know that I'd be good at it. I don't know that I would. And he said, Bryan, you provide so much value as a father. You have so much experience because you got two older boys. You have all this experience. Why not share it with other people that may be struggling in areas? And I thought about it. I came home. I talked to my wife about it. She's like, that's a great idea. You need to do that. And so that's how I dove in. And to be honest, I wish, like I said, I wish I would have started it sooner because I've done almost 80 interviews with different, all kinds of different dads. I've had a couple moms on my show. I had my wife on my show and I had another lady on my show. I've had a couple moms on my show. And it's funny how much I've really felt that I've impacted other dads and even just listeners listening to the show, how many tools and strategies and different ideas that they've come up with or shared. It's been so fulfilling. And like I said, I wish I would have started it sooner, but I'm glad I'm on the journey now. It's just, it's going well. And, it's starting to kind of I've been doing it for 1.5 years now, and things are really starting to come together more and more and more. I've had radio stations reach out to me to interview me. I was featured in a newspaper. I had no clue. They just reached out to me. Apparently the editor of the newspaper listens to my podcast. I had no idea. She reached out to me and said, hey, we want to do an article on you. So all these different things are happening and it's great. I'm not doing it for the money. I don't make any money off of it. It's really about the connection and how I can help other families because families are struggling. There are plenty of families that are struggling, especially dads. Dads are struggling because they feel this weight of being the financial provider for their family. So they have to work these long hours and put in all this time at work. But you can still do those things and still be a successful father. So that's why I'm trying to kind of encourage dads to be that.
Love that. Now, I don't know if you have full disclosure to be able to talk about, because you're a superstar. I mean, there is no doubt. We spend a lot of time together in the mornings, just speaking. And I am so impressed with the way that you're able to not only pour into others, and you have attracted some big names. Are you allowed to talk about some of the people that you've interviewed in case someone wants to go review your podcasts?
Well, let's see. Gosh, as a matter of fact, today, my episode comes out every Sunday. And today I had Matthew West, who's a huge Christian music artist, very, very talented guy, super great guy. I was texting with him all day long today he's like, oh man, I'm so glad it came out. He's just thanking me and everything, but he's just a really cool guy. So I had Matthew West on, obviously my brother-in-law who's big, but I've had Chris Powell on, Inky Johnson. I've had a couple of guys that were on a TV show, a reality TV show called Teen Mom. I had a couple of those dads on. I've had a drag race guy on. I mean, I've had a lot of Major League Baseball umpire on. Gosh, I had, you may know this guy. He's very famous now, but he was in the commercial with the cranberry juice riding a skateboard to the Fleetwood Mac song. His name's Dogface. His real name's Nathaniel. But yes. I had Dogface on. The guy's just huge because of he just blew up on social media. But so I've had a lot of big names on, and it's not about who I have on. It's really about the value and the impact that they can provide, and the story. What kind of story do they have as a dad? Is your story interesting? Do you have what kind of dynamics so I've had regular guys on that aren't these high profile guys. I've had regular guys on. I'm gonna have you on, and you're a freaking stud. Right? I mean, I have all kinds of, variety of dads on. It's not just about the high profile guys. It's more about what kind of value you're going to bring as a dad on my program. What is your story like? And how impactful are you or have you been in your family's life? So it's been cool. It's been a fun journey.
I have to admire that because some people get nervous when they're being interviewed, right? And you've gotten a chance to interview some Major League Baseball all-stars, and then you're interviewing an umpire. So I was very curious about that. I know some of the people because I've seen on your profile and absolutely admire your work because you're right. It doesn't matter about the title. When it comes down to it at the end of the day, these are people who are human beings. They have the same emotions as we have, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, right? And they still continue. There are some people who somebody has never heard of, but when they say that one thing or tell that one story, it hits home.
Yeah.
And
I
you
mean,
never know who you're going to impact and what audience is tuning in. So that's why I have, complete respect and admiration for the people that you've had on, that you've poured into. And I want to talk a little bit, if we don't mind getting personal here. I
mhm,
know that you do just amazing things with your wife. Not
mhm,
only do you have a full-time job, you have shared a little bit. My wife is legally deaf. And so it's
okay,
very hard to have a conversation with her when, she's not reading my lips. So,
right,
she'll look at me and I'll look away and she sees my mouth moving. And when we
right.
talked about communication earlier, it was like,
That's
what
hard.
did you just say? And so
Right.
there's a lot of wires that can be crossed there. What are some of the things that you have found, just supporting your wife now that your, kids are going to be, gone after, your son finishes school? What are some of the things that you get to do with your wife to really support her and help her in her endeavors?
Well, I try to spend as much time as I can with my wife. Obviously, I have my job in the morning, that goes throughout the day, and then I have my coaching at night. My weekends, other than, if I have periodically, I'll have podcast interviews come up on the weekends like this one. Um, it's only an hour out of my time, so it's not a big deal. But my weekends are really devoted to her. My evenings, I spend, the last hour or two of my evening hanging out with her, and we just sit and watch TV together. Tonight we're going to do a puzzle. Uh, I mean, she had mentioned. It's funny. She had mentioned last week we were watching a program, and she said, "Oh, we haven't done a puzzle in forever. That looks like fun." So I ordered, while we're sitting there watching TV, I ordered a couple of, jigsaw puzzles, and they came in the mail last week, and she was super, she thought it was the nicest thing in the world. So she's looking forward to doing that this evening. And, through this pandemic, it's been hard because there hasn't been a whole lot we can do. We are huge about going to the movies every weekend. We just about every weekend we're at a movie, and it's just the two of us. But through this pandemic, we've had to kind of pivot and find other things to do. And we've done things like just get in the car and go for a drive. And we won't have anywhere in particular that we're going. We'll just drive. And we've been gone for like half a day. I live in Southern California. We've driven everywhere. And it's just the two of us just chilling, talking, listening to music, windows down, just kind of cruising. So we've had a lot of fun doing that. And we go hiking, walking, running, every weekend together. We went this morning. We went for a run. So we do those things together. I try to do those things as much as possible. When we're going to be empty nesters, I think we're going to do a lot more traveling. As a matter of fact, we both got our COVID vaccines completely updated. So as soon as we did that, as soon as she got hers completely done, she was immediately on the computer booking somewhere to go. So the first week of April, her and I are going up to Yellowstone, and we're going to go up there for a week and hang out and do some stuff and drive around and all that stuff in Montana. So so we're going to be doing a lot more traveling. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm really anxious for the boys to be out of the house. My older son, he has a job and he's saving money right now to move out by the summer. My younger son's still in college. When he goes back to college in the fall, we will be empty nesters. And so I am looking forward to that because, we're going to have a lot more close time together. But yeah, we are pretty much together all the time. Now, my wife is legally blind. So when she has to run errands, grocery shopping and all that kind of stuff, I have to go with her. Now, I don't have to go with her. I get to go with her, right? I know you and I have talked about it before. I've changed my language to say, hey, I don't have to do these things. I get to do these things because it's quality time together. Even though we're just running errands, it's still quality time together. Today we were out looking at Home Depot we're going to replace our countertops. So even though we're doing stuff around the house, it's time together that the two of us are spending. So we do that a lot. We're together a lot. As much as I am doing all these other things, we are still together a lot.
Well, you made it clear that you've made the intentions. The weekends are yours. You're
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing. You're making sure that that is first. And it's a non-negotiable for you.
Right.
I have two questions for you. Number
Sure.
one, we're going to talk about maybe how you hold yourself accountable and the men that you surround yourself with. Before we get to that, I would love to know, and there's been a lot of curiosity around this. In your 48 years of being on this earth, what was your biggest aha moment in life where you could pinpoint and say, I'm here for this reason or this purpose? You might have been through some peaks. You might have been through some valleys. You might have been through the lowest of lows. What would you say your biggest lesson learned is to date? And how has that affected you parenting and also moving forward as a man?
Well, it's something for me that I'm not super proud of. It was one of my lowest lows that I went through, not only as a husband, but as a father. I had, I had gone through this period of my life where I was still, I'm super active with my boys and coaching and everything. I was doing all that fine, but I found myself in the evening times and on the weekends doing a lot of drinking. So I was consuming a lot of alcohol, and it was not something that I'm proud of. I was raised in an alcoholic family, so I have the alcoholic tendencies in me, and I started to notice that my boys are starting to be a little bit older at this time, and I was finding myself relaxing, watching TV, and I would have a beer. And then when I was done with the beer, I'd ask my boys, "Hey, can you grab me another beer out of the fridge?" And one time after doing that, obviously this had gone on for years, but one time after doing that, it just clicked. I'm like, I cannot believe I'm having my boys get me alcohol to drink. And my wife had been mentioning to me, "Hey, you're doing a lot of drinking," and I brushed it off. I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine." I was what they would call a functional alcoholic.